Yep, and then just kind of shake it out. Better.
It's time to rank the worst fashion shows of all time. Like the spite of an angry god, I will strike down with righteous fury the worst fashion shows, and we will collectively make those designers feel so bad. If you have a weak constitution, I recommend you either turn this video off or find some leather to bite down on, because we are going to destroy some careers today. Can you imagine if I was actually going to do that? One of the things that I get called out on a lot is not being critical of fashion shows, like never being mean about them, as if a fashion critic cannot exist without being critical of some runway shows. By the way, throughout this video, we're going to be looking at runway shows so that you're not just staring at my face for 10 minutes. That's not because these runway shows demonstrate badness in some ways. They're just cool runway shows. I like them and I want to show them to you. All right, let's take it to the Oxford English Dictionary so we can see what's up. Criticism means the passing of judgment on a person or thing, especially the expression of a harsh or unfavorable opinion of a person or thing. Fault finding, censure. I think that's the definition that most people are talking about when they refer to like, oh, you're not a fashion critic. This is not criticism. And yeah, I mean, in fashion, we have a really big cult around negative criticism right now, and there's a really specific reason why. Fashion functions different than other art forms just because of access. Can we put the word up here, please? Access. In order to judge the merits of a fashion collection, you have to, one, see the runway show in person. Like you have to be in the room with it. And then two, you have to be in a showroom setting wherein you can see all of the products from the collection in one place. Usually, fashion critics are only able to do one of those. Usually we end up going to the runway show and don't have time to go to the showroom because there's like 100 brands that show every single fashion week, and we try to hit at least 40 of them. And doing 40 of them means that we can't go to the showroom as well most of the time.
Your phone is in the corner of that table.
But you have to go to one of them because seeing clothes in person move on a body, or being able to try them on, or being able to touch the material, that is always going to be radically different than just looking at clothes or collections on a flat screen. But of course, in order to get into that show or get into that showroom, you have to be invited by the brand themselves. They control the access to those two events. But of course, for a film critic, they can just go to a theater, pay a small fee, and then just watch the movie like everybody else. A music critic can just log into Spotify, type the album name in, and then listen to it. I mean, I'm sure it's nice to be able to go to film premieres if you're in good with that production company, or to go to like official listening parties and like dab it up with celebrities. But ultimately, they do not need those things in order to do their job correctly. Long term, for a fashion critic, you're not going to be able to make it happen unless you're there in the room with the clothes. I, of course, had multiple years where I wasn't able to go to Paris, and I still persisted and did my thing. But if I was doing that for 20 straight years, never going to shows, I would be missing a lot of information that I wouldn't be able to share with you all. Okay, so because of this access problem, you have the fashion show attendee starter kit of like wildly applauding and smiling all the time and being like, I love it, as often as possible. Even worse, sometimes reviews for these shows are written. I mean, if you don't know about this, I'm about to like blow your mind. So like Vogue, for example, Vogue shows up to all these different runway shows and they're writing reviews for them. Okay, so those reviews are being written about brands who are also their advertising partners. So they can't say anything bad about them, or else the brand will be like, well, I'm not spending thousands of dollars with you this month anymore. You were talking shit about me. So they would drop them. So they just always have to say nice things about them, which has led to hilarious things. I have also witnessed a number of different times Vogue shit-talking brands when they don't advertise with them. That conflict of interest has basically always existed in fashion. But of course, with every large movement, there's going to be a group of reactionaries that are working against it. People like Susie Minkes and Kathy Horn in the 1990s who just roasted the shit out of collections that they did not like. They really didn't hold back. And despite working for large publications, those two women were often blacklisted from shows, but they just kept going. They kept doing it. And this wasn't just them being mean for the sake of it. This was constructive criticism. It was real feedback. Both of those women are still working as fashion critics today, and I have a massive unfettered crush on both of them.
Dude, I love her.
Me too. Mother Superior.
Yeah.
And even now, like, I mean, if you look around in fashion media even a little bit, you will find that the last few years have been filled with conversation about what fashion criticism is. And most of these podcasts and writings and think pieces and little mini docuseries and stuff, all of them just circle around this idea that you have to be critical, you have to be negative, as if that's the only way that you can trust a critic is if they're really shitting on something. Okay, so We do not do negative reviews on this channel, and I would like a chance to defend myself, and I'm the only one with a microphone, so I'm going to do that. We benefit from our no negative reviews policy. Obviously. Like, it would be crazy if I pretended that we didn't. In order for us to get the access that we need in order to cover Fashion Week in the way that we're able to present it to you, we have to do positive reviews. But stopping the conversation there is ignoring a lot of the story. Bullet points for a little bit. 1, I try to live by the creed of don't be judgmental, be curious. Shout out Walt Whitman. Gay icon? Let's see. Oh, hell yeah, gay icon. Shout out Walt Whitman, gay icon. I'm editing right now. Walt Whitman didn't say that. I just fact-checked myself and he didn't say that. My bad. Still, shout out Walt Whitman, gay icon. Okay, so there is a cop-out version of this that just kind of is like, I'm just a positive guy. But I mean, speaking personally, I'm a recovering smartass know-it-all where like all through college and all through my 20s, I was obsessed with categorizing and labeling and proving that certain art was better, specifically my art was better than your different art. Like Ariana Grande sucks and Animal Collective is smart and cool. Obviously, I found this method to be mega unproductive for continuing to learn about stuff, so I just kind of had to drop it. And when I started this channel, I really had to drop it. As often as I can, I try to, instead of saying like, oh, I hate this, I try to say, I don't get this yet, because I really have had my mind changed about stuff before. B, negative criticism requires a lot more knowledge than people think that it does. There is nothing productive or useful about just going whack and then just moving on. You have to explain yourself. There have to be reasons why it is bad. Is this derivative? Fine, it's derivative. Being derivative is bad. What is it derivative of? Why is it derivative? Can you point to the specific things? But to be honest, if you are going to claim that something is derivative, for example, like designer X is really just ripping off designer Y, you had better understand everything about both designers' body of work before you start saying that, or you're going to look like an idiot really quickly. And Daniela and I have watched content online where other reviewers are trying to shit on some fashion collection and call it derivative, and Daniela and I have looked at each other and like shook our heads and been like, they don't get it. They're not looking at it the right way. Trois. The absolute worst type of criticism is someone just telling you their personal preference about something and then like packaging it up really nicely and presenting it as criticism. Like, for example, I don't particularly care for the fashion genre of camp. It's never resonated with me personally. I find it emotionally kind of like off-putting a little bit. And also, I really like the color green. And guess what? None of that fucking matters. You need to do your job effectively. No one cares what your personal preference is. Like, obviously. Quattro. Fashion media has evolved. Fashion media used to be entirely tied up in the just explaining things. Do you know why? Because all you could see of runway shows was some shitty monochrome picture in the New York Times. It's like one picture. That's like all you could see. If I did not live in one of the 4 fashion cities and if I wasn't able to go to shows, my only option for keeping up with this stuff was maybe some fashion channel in my country, the New York Times giving me that grainy monochrome picture, and maybe some magazine editorials in a few months. But if I wanted to just see every look from Martin Margiela's 1994 spring collection, good fucking luck. There's just no way to do that. So the critics were just there describing the collection in great detail so that everyone knew where to direct their shopping when they traveled to a major city. But I mean, now you get the immediate full resolution pictures and videos the same day that the show comes out in person. It is not the same as being in the room, but it is orders of magnitude more than you got pre-internet. Like, you as the consumer, you no longer need to be told what is good and what is bad. Newsflash, you are 100% capable of deciding what fashion collections you like. And it really doesn't work for someone, especially not some rando sitting in his parents' living room, to tell you what stuff that you like and what stuff that you already like that you shouldn't like. Like, that makes no sense at all. But what we do best on this channel, in my mind, is that we're able to get really, really close to everything. We spend a lot of time. We've been there in person. And that way we're able to bring you all the things that we have found in great detail. Hopefully in detail that you were not able to pick up on just by looking at video or looking at a few pictures on Twitter. So no more bullet points. Another huge overarching problem is that the fashion brands at large usually view fashion media as an extension of their marketing department. From their perspective, I can see why they feel the need to do that. After all, the brands are paying the PR people to promote them, so they're looking for any and all opportunities to positively promote their client. But on our end, for Bliss and Daniela, what that means is that we're pretty much only covering things that we like or that we have something interesting to say about. There are many times where we have covered brands where it's like, was I crazy about that collection? No. Do I have something interesting to say about it? Yes. I think other people will benefit from hearing this. Let's put it on. People in fashion media are called upon all the time to do reviews for shows that they really did not like. And at least in our case, it is in the best interest of the fashion designer, the brand at large, the PR teams, the audience, myself, all of you. It is in your best interest if I just stay quiet about it. For a lot of publications, again, they're tied up in this conflict of interest of we need advertising partners, and those advertising partners are the ones that we are reviewing. And so we got to just put on a brave face and be like, oh, so good. I loved it. But instead, because we don't have advertising partners, or at least, I mean, we consider it to be a conflict of interest. We have had brands reach out to us before and say, like, we'd love to sponsor an episode. We love what you do. And that is so kind. Like, I really can't express enough how flattering that is, going from a place where it's like, I'm just making YouTube videos by myself to being in a place where brands are like, we actually like what you do. Can we please sponsor an episode? Man, I'm honored. But that's a conflict of interest, so we have to tell them no. We do take sponsors, we recently worked with Fashionary, and I thought that was great because it's a resource, it's a book, and that's something that I am happy to share with you all as a advertising partner. But because we don't have to write reviews about our advertising partners, we get to choose what stuff we take on and what stuff we don't take on. And I guess you want me to shit on stuff or whatever, but because I'm not doing that, it makes it where I do feel like I am largely being very honest when I tell you that I do like something because I do. And also, I mean, y'all could tell. I realize that the person that I am when this camera's turned on is I am the most excited, hyped up version, coffeeed version of myself when I'm doing this. And I mean, when I'm at home with Danny, I'm not acting like this 24/7. Though I do sometimes act like this, and I occasionally get told that it's time to bring the energy down just a little bit.
I literally don't think I've said that to you once.
No, you haven't. You're so sweet to me all the time. Thank you. I think I tell myself occasionally that it's time to bring the energy down a little bit. All of that aside, I mean, I feel like you could tell. If I was sitting here having to talk through my teeth about something that I didn't even find to be interesting, I feel like it would be pretty obvious. This all ties back to a fantastic piece of writing by Lars Svensson, where he sets up a discussion as to what a fashion critic actually does. I found it in this book personally, but the article is called this. Great book overall. Strongly recommend that you pick one up. Our buddy Lars says that fashion criticism is composed of 5 things: evaluation, description, comparison, contextualization, and interpretation. Just to walk that out, these are the definitions as provided by Lars in the essay. Evaluation is passing judgment on the work supported by explicit reasons. Description is about telling readers what a creation is like and how the various parts fit together. How do color, cut, pattern, and texture work together? It lays the foundation for the other aspects of criticism. Comparisons consist in pointing out similarities and differences in relation to other creations. Contextualization is about placing the creation within a framework of the designer's previous work, his or her inspirations, and the wider cultural surroundings. Interpretation attempts to answer the question, what is the meaning or significance of this? This aspect will clearly vary a lot for the simple reason that some creations are richer in terms of interpretive content than others. So Lars makes a really big point that evaluation is the most important part of being a fashion critic. Something that he points out is that, quote, in any discipline, be it painting, fiction, or cinema, most of what is produced at any time will be bad. That is naturally the case for fashion. No painter, author, or director produces only masterpieces, and neither does any fashion designer, end quote. I absolutely agree with that. Despite how much you all know that I love Martin Margiela, he absolutely had some misses. This show in particular, this is my least favorite Martin Margiela show, and I realize that just taking out a single clip here, it looks kind of cool. When taken in as a whole, it really they just weren't bringing a whole lot that season. But you could possibly, like when you're watching the Margiela series, you could mistake my enthusiasm about talking about the work at large and the symbolism and kind of what this means for everyone. You might mistake that for being like, oh, everything he's made is good no matter what, no matter what. That's not true. There's a difference between like, oh my gosh, I love it, and hey, we need to talk about this because it is part of the oeuvre and it does connect to other things, and so we do need to cover it for 20 minutes. Mr. Svensson says that unless you utilize negative critique, the positive holds no weight. And if I'm being honest, I respectfully disagree with Mr. Svensson because, and now is actually a good time for me to say this on record, I am a fashion critic who is thinking about my own work in terms of 100 years from now. I hope that the work that we are putting out now is useful to historians and fashion critics and just fans of fashion in the future, 100 years from now, for really understanding the culture and the way in which a fashion collection functions mechanically in the present day. Plus, I mean, do you know how many times Vogue Runway has had to go back and revise their own reviews? They will literally take their old review down off the website and they will replace it with some intern's couple of paragraphs about like, this collection was very important. Martin Margiela proved to the world that recycling was pretty neat. What these critics at Vogue during the, let's say, Margiela show, what they were doing was what Lars wanted them to do, which was evaluating the merits of the collection. Wouldn't it have been more valuable to know what the collection was about? Now, largely, I found myself in agreement with Lars, where he says things like, you know, calling something good or bad does not make you a critic. You are not just like the magic decider of things. You have to have reasons as to why it's bad. And he has a quote here where it's going to sound like Bliss is saying this, but Bliss is not saying this. Lars is saying this. Quote, for instance, just being bitchy is not the same as being properly critical. Mere negativity is so often confused with genuine criticism. Unjustified negativity is no improvement over unjustified positivity, end quote. This is kind of the big thing that we have to contend with in fashion today is just empty praise, empty criticism. Like, wow, that was such an emotional show. Okay, how was it emotional? What does emotional even mean? Oh, this was just so fresh. This is for the modern woman. Okay, wait, how? Wait, how are you defining modern woman? What does fresh mean? I have such profound respect for what Mr. Svensson writes about fashion criticism. Like, he writes extensively on how fashion criticism is sort of the midway point between fashion theory and fashion media. And personally, that's helped me a ton in my own work. I just gotta disagree with him. I really do not think that evaluation is the most important part of what I do. There's this public obsession with ranking things out of 10. So like, I mean, in fashion, there is nobody who's like, I rate this show an 8.5 out of 10. There is nobody who does that. But that's sort of the mentality that we bring to all of this. Like when I'm reviewing a small designer who has very limited resources and I go, man, that show was really awesome. All the time I get people who are like DMing me and sometimes people who just comment publicly and will say things like, actually this wasn't very, like, are you saying this is as good as the new Rick Owens show? Like as if there is any way to compare reasonably someone who's like, yeah, I had $30,000 to produce the collection, do the runway show and like pay myself. That's it. Versus like Owens Corp. Both of them were good. They were both great. Since the dawn of the internet, we've kind of given this the old college try, ranking things out of 10. Resident Advisor is a online news publication that talks about electronic music. I read them every single morning. They gave up on the numeric rating system years ago because they just found it the word they used was distracting. And I totally agree with that. Not just using numbers to rank things, but the idea of being able to like rank things over, oh, this is better than this. It's distracting. And like how many people have seen Anthony Fantano go back and re-rank something because like his ranking from before just doesn't make any sense a few years later? Or he just, get this, he changed his mind. Ultimately, a ranking system for measuring art doesn't work because of the things that it assumes to be true. And I'm not just like trying to wave around big words here. I just can't think of another way to describe this. All systems assume that certain things are true. Like the roadway system assumes that you, the driver, understand the difference between a broken up white line and a double yellow solid line. It assumes that cars are about the same size as the lanes on the road. It assumes that you, the driver, know the difference between a red light, a yellow light, and a green light, right? The biggest problem with ranking things is that it either assumes that art stands still in culture or that it just exists entirely outside of culture. Like back in March of 1998, fashion critics were leaving Martin Margiela's first show at Hermes and they were trying to make up their mind minds about what they thought about it. Most of them at the time were pretty lukewarm. They were like, Hermes is great, it's cool, like I have one of their bags, but like, I mean, this collection was pretty mid. Like, it was really boring. There was nothing going on. And at the time, there was so much in fashion to be excited about that they just sort of panned it. If they were ranking it out of 10, they probably would have all said, it's like a solid 6.5 or a 7 maybe out of 10. We just made a huge video about this. It's one of the best videos that we put out in all of 2023. You should absolutely go watch this video.
Put it out in 2024.
We put it out in 2020. Oh, it was on January 2nd. We put it out in 2024. Best video of the year, folks. Okay, so fast forward many years later, that 7 out of 10 would be woefully inaccurate. It wouldn't just be like, well, that's just like your opinion, man. It would be wrong. There have been multiple exhibitions honoring these collections and talking about them as like, this is one of the only solid attempts in the modern world at achieving perfect clothing. And those assessments are accurate. A 7 out of 10 is just factually inaccurate for this show. And that's not anyone's fault. They just didn't get it yet. They didn't have the time to really understand what Martin was doing there. And that's because it needed to develop culturally before people understood what it was really doing. So at the time, what they might have better been doing is to say, what is this show doing? What are the details that make it do what it does? If you ask, how does this work function mechanically, you are always going to be better off as a critic. The problem is, that's really time consuming and it's really hard to do. So like, what is the point here? What value can I, Bliss, bring to fashion criticism if I'm not ranking shows or like giving my value assessments about collections? Culture needs to have independent folks whose job it is to think publicly about certain topics. Sometimes that does mean ranking things. Sometimes that does mean celebrating something that the critic loves. Sometimes that does mean explaining a trend and like how you can wear it and like for different body types. And yes, sometimes that does mean tearing certain things down. But there is such a massive problem if that is all that a critic is doing. I promise, I am not making this video to shit on anybody or to tear any other content creator or critic's work down. I'm really not trying to do that. But a big part of why I started this channel was because I wanted, maybe 7-10 years ago, I wanted very badly to learn about fashion from a theoretical perspective. I wanted insights into the mechanics of artful fashion design, and I wanted to know more about fashion's creative process. Lil Bliss used to read a Vogue review and watch a Runway video and listen to interviews with the designers and talk about the clothes on forums, but I just always felt like there was something missing, that there was some way to go deeper with this thing that I loved so much. So I started looking around online and all I could find is what I just listed. It was this endless stream of articles and videos and podcasts that were attempting to rank things in some way, this endless series of content that was trying to tell me that I was doing my hair wrong, or that like, this is how to make your shirt fit right, or like a fashion video that was trying to tell me what kind of hand soap I should start using. Like, the fuck? That is not what rigorous examination of an art form means. And for that matter, endless negativity is also not rigorous examination of an art form. By comparison, okay, this is crazy. Did you know that there was an entire literary journal, so an academic journal that's published for other academics? There was a whole regularly published journal dedicated only to the play Hamlet. It was just continued literary analysis, hundreds of years after Hamlet was written, only about Hamlet. Why would anyone do that stuff? Because literature is complicated. Art is complicated. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of hard work to actually uncover what a really ground-shaking piece of art is doing to us. All of those feelings that fashion shows and really good movies and incredible music, all of those feelings that it's stirring up in us, those feelings are, the reasons for them are complicated. And unwinding and going through all of that, that's an important job. I love fashion, and I love fashion people. Going to Fashion Week for me feels like summer camp, but I think sometimes we get so caught up in being cute and having fun that we forget that there is real work that is necessary in order for our discipline to be taken seriously as an art form. This is why I find interpretation to be the most important role of my job. But without describing the show meaningfully, drawing comparisons to the designer's previous body of work and the work of others in the space, and the contextualization of what this show means in culture, interpretation doesn't mean a lot. My goal is to use all of that to help other people, to help you understand how fashion makes meaning. Not always what it means, but at least for us all to understand, how is this making meaning? If you asked a random person, like, how does fashion reflect culture? They would say something along the lines of, oh, like fashion is kind of like, it's what we're all like just sort of like feeling like right now. They might say something goofy about like hemlines and the economy, and they would just be like, it's just sort of like the mood that everyone has right now. So those kind of pithy non-answers really undercut designers that are saying very specific things about culture and saying them so gracefully and beautifully that occasionally while making episodes, I start crying. That's why I've always preferred it the way that Valerie Steele, the genius, says it, which is that fashion does not reflect culture, fashion is culture. So our goal is to communicate to the public, and very much learning as we go, how does fashion make meaning?